So let's talk about the next type of app service called API apps. You can go into the marketplace, scroll down to the web section, and you'll see API apps as one of the options. Once again, it's got a different name, a different label, but under the scenes, it is created exactly the same as a web app, and it looks, behaves, and acts like a web app. I have an API app already created. Now, APIs, application programming interfaces, are web apps that don't have a user interface. They don't return HTML. They're not typically browsable by humans. They're meant for programs to talk to each other. As such, there are two distinguishing features here within the settings for API apps. One of the first ones and most relevant is the CORS settings, which is cross-origin resource sharing. Now, the CORS standard is an internet standard that basically prevents browsers from being able to access APIs that are they're not authorized to access. The API basically has to have a published origin restriction. So let's say I have an API and I know that only application running on example.com is the only origin that I want to support. So I can add example.com HTTPS in my CORS request, and basically no other website should be able to use my API other than example.com. Now, if you want to open your app API for anyone to use, then you can just use an asterisk, and that will mean that your API is basically usable by any website on the web. So the CORS is a security standard. I guess it was added about 10 years ago, and if you want your APIs to be used by anyone or only restricted for use on your own website, you want to be setting this appropriately. The other distinguishing feature for APIs is typically, since there's no user interface, you need to know how to interface with it in order to be able to. So to demonstrate this, I decided to go to GitHub and find the official Azure samples user, and it contains a number of repositories, one having to do with the app service API. Okay, it's a to-do list application. I downloaded the code, loaded it into Visual Studio 2017, and compiled successfully the first time, and I'm running it on my local. Okay. Now this API, this to-do list has a front-end component, but more importantly for us, it's got an API component. So /API/to-do list returns, very small sample list of to-dos. Now, if we stop this from running and we go to the project, we can see here that there are three projects. One is the Angular, obviously the front end. There is an API and a data API. Now, what I want to show to you is the NuGet package for Swagger. Now, the one that Microsoft recommends is called Swashbuckle. And basically, if you install this on your project, it will allow you to build your API documentation. It basically is able to read your API. You build the documentation, and this allows your API to be discoverable by both humans and other computers. Now, this application already came with a Swagger version 5.0. So we can see if we go into the URL /Swagger, it comes up with this user interface that we can use to start testing with our API. So the to-do list API has a number of get, input, and post options that we can obviously get our to-do list and get individual items and delete individual items and add items to our to-do list. So it basically allows us to not only explore the API, but then we can even test it real time. So we can call this API to-do list and we can see the response to it and even the headers that come back from that. So Swagger is basically a standard for application API documentation. we could, if we publish this to Azure, Azure as the API app, we know that the Swagger documentation is the URL of the app slash Swagger. That's when we can go into the Azure portal and post the URL slash Swagger as the API definition location. And basically this allows us to tie in our definition of our API into our Azure app service.